What McLaren just did to Oscar Piastri after new evidence emerged might change everything. The Singapore Grand Prix wasn't supposed to turn into this kind of chaos. Not for Oscar Piastri, not for McLaren, and certainly not for fans who believed the team was on the verge of a glorious comeback. Instead, what unfolded under the Marina Bay lights has turned into a viral storm, a drama-filled saga that feels more like betrayal than racing. What happened between Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris in Singapore, specifically on lap 1, turn 3, has peeled back the surface to reveal something much deeper inside McLaren. This isn't just about a racing incident. It's about favoritism, fairness, and a young championship contender watching the ground beneath him start to crack. Let's rewind. Oscar Piastri lined up third on the grid, while Lando Norris started fifth. When the lights went out, chaos followed in seconds. Norris lunged aggressively, made slight contact with Verstappen's Red Bull, and then clipped Piastri's McLaren. Through that chaos, Norris pushed ahead of his teammate, through contact that McLaren's own team rules forbid. Piastri's response was calm but revealing. "Yeah, I mean that wasn't very team-like, but sure," he said, his tone composed but his meaning clear. Moments later, that composure faded into frustration. "So, are we cool with Lando just barging me out of the way, or what's the go there?" he radioed in. His engineer, Tom Stallard, replied with a hesitant, "We're looking at it. Let me get back to you." That pause said it all. Minutes later, the verdict came: no action. As a team, we can see Lando had to avoid Verstappen, so we won't take any action during the race. We can review further afterwards. For Oscar, that was the final straw. "That's not fair. I'm sorry, that's not fair," he said after the race. If he has to avoid another car by crashing into his teammate, then that's a pretty poor job of avoiding. It wasn't an emotional outburst, it was controlled anger, and every word cut deeper than any on-track mistake. Because this wasn't just about Singapore. This was about Hungary, about Monza, about a pattern that's been building all season. Back in Monza, Oscar let Lando pit first. Later, strategy shuffled the order and Oscar ended up ahead. But team orders followed. "Swap positions," McLaren said. Oscar obeyed, but that moment left a scar. In Hungary, strategy again favored Lando, even though Oscar entered the weekend as McLaren's lead car in the championship. Each time, the same justification: "We'll review it later." But later never seemed to change anything. And then came the moment that sent the internet into meltdown. As the race ended in Singapore, McLaren CEO Zak Brown came on the radio to thank Oscar for his performance, but Oscar unplugged his radio mid-message. Fans instantly noticed. "Oscar's villain arc is complete," one tweet read. Another said, "McLaren would rather Max win the title than Oscar." Within an hour, that clip racked up over 60,000 views and thousands of likes. Theories exploded online. Was this the start of a breakdown between Piastri and McLaren? The team tried to calm things down, claiming Oscar had already turned off the car before Zak spoke, meaning he never heard the message. But by then, the internet had already decided. Because whether or not he heard it didn't matter. What mattered was what people saw, and what Oscar seemed to feel. After the race, Piastri spoke publicly, choosing his words with surgical precision. "There have obviously been some difficult situations for the whole team. We've spoken about a number of things. Could things have been better at certain points? Yes, but I'm very happy that the intentions are well-meaning, if that makes sense," he said. Polite words, but with hidden meaning. Could things have been better? This is another one. It was clear, he knew exactly what was going on. He was watching a season slip away not because of his pace, but because of politics. Meanwhile, Lando Norris's tone was entirely different. "It was slippery, but it's racing," he said casually. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a shrug. And that's the core of this story. Oscar sees favoritism. Lando sees racing. McLaren's team boss Andrea Stella insists there will be good conversations, like there were after Canada and Monza. But fans have heard that before. And maybe Oscar has too. Because at some point, good conversations stop meaning anything when results never change. McLaren has long preached equality. "We give both drivers equal opportunity," Zak Brown said earlier this season. But if that's true, why does it always seem like decisions swing one way? In Hungary, Oscar was in prime form, leading McLaren's charge. Yet strategy turned his advantage into Lando's victory. In Monza, Oscar pitted first, undercut Lando, and briefly led, until the team ordered him to swap positions. Each incident on its own could be dismissed as racing luck, but together, they paint a pattern that came to a head in Singapore when Piastri, after being hit by his teammate, was told there would be no internal action. That's not just frustration, it's a breaking point. Because when your own team doesn't step in to defend you, when they say they'll review later but never act, you start to lose trust. That radio unplug, intentional or not, felt symbolic. A young driver disconnecting from the narrative being fed to him, from the illusion of equal treatment. Stella later admitted, when you race together as a team, you can't have exactly the same interest for the two drivers. They want to pursue their aspirations. And he's right. But McLaren's identity for 2025 has been built around the idea of two equals, two rising stars. And from the outside, that illusion is cracking fast. Lando Norris has mastered the media game. Calm, composed, always avoiding blame. It was slippery, but it's racing, he says. He keeps it clean publicly, even when things get messy internally. Oscar, on the other hand, wears the frustration quietly. He follows orders, does what's asked, and yet somehow ends up the one compromised. In Singapore, he qualified ahead, started ahead, got hit, and finished behind. That's not just lost points, it's lost momentum and possibly a lost title shot. Heading into the United States Grand Prix, Oscar leads Lando by 22 points, with Verstappen 63 behind. 6 races remain. Every point counts. Every small team decision could define the championship outcome. Yet McLaren's internal review of the Singapore clash is still pending. Andrea Stella says there will be another round of good conversations, but fans are tired of hearing it. How many good conversations do they need before they fix it? One fan posted. Another wrote, McLaren keeps protecting Lando. Oscar deserves better. It's a sentiment echoing across social media, a growing sense that McLaren's young Australian star is being quietly pushed into a corner. And maybe he knows it. Because what happens when the driver with the most points and the most patience starts to feel that patience wearing thin? The constructor's title may be wrapped up, but inside the team, the driver dynamics are tearing at the seams. McLaren has always marketed itself as a team of unity, of shared goals. But every new controversy exposes just how fragile that balance really is. And in the middle of it all stands Oscar Piastri, a rookie-turned-contender who may be realizing that trust doesn't always come with talent. Fans are already imagining what's next. Could Oscar move to Red Bull? Could he join Aston Martin or Mercedes if a seat opens? Speculation runs wild. But one thing's clear, McLaren is running out of time to fix this. If the perception of favoritism continues, it won't just cost them a driver. It could cost them their credibility. Because perception in Formula One is everything. When a team says equal treatment, but one driver keeps getting the short end, fans notice. Sponsors notice. The paddock notices. And eventually, drivers act. Oscar Piastri may not be shouting, but silence speaks louder sometimes. That moment he unplugged the radio, accidental or not, has become symbolic. It represents a driver silently rebelling against politics and power imbalance. Maybe it wasn't a villain arc after all. Maybe it's a hero arc, a young driver standing up against the unspoken hierarchy of Formula One. McLaren says they'll review, they'll discuss, they'll improve. But how many times can they say that before words lose meaning? Singapore wasn't just another race. It was a moment of truth. Because sometimes, the biggest statement a driver can make is not with words, but with silence. Oscar Piastri may not be done with McLaren yet, but one thing's certain, he's no longer pretending everything's fine. The next few races will decide not just the championship, but McLaren's integrity. Has McLaren mishandled their rising star? Is Piastri right to feel frustrated? Or is this all just part of racing politics? Whatever the truth, one thing is undeniable. When Piastri unplugged that radio, he might have said more than any press conference ever could.